welcome back to my channel. My name is Rose. I talk usually a lot about AVPD, but this video I just wanted to talk a lot about some conversation tips that I have learned. And I'm a person who has AVPD, which is avoidant personality disorder, and very, very socially awkward, or at least I was for most of my life. So about a year ago, I had a breakthrough where, no, not even a year ago, about 6 months ago, someone was very drunk, and I was telling them about how I was afraid to go to this event because there was a bunch of people there, and they straight up looked at me and they said, well, you're a coward. And I was like, no, I'm not, you know. And I started thinking about it, and I realized that they were actually right, that I'm actually just very afraid of a lot of things. And so it really made me wake up and desire to just not be afraid. And that point really made everything else that I'd been studying really click. So I've been reading books about conversation tips. I've watched tons of videos about how to converse with people. I've, you know, read people's tips on how to just have basic small talk. I've tried to throw myself into situations to make it less awkward, and just failed over and over again until I really came to face that one question of like, why am I so bad at this? And it was literally because I was just afraid. So having come to terms with that and having these other tips, I've come to the place where people like desire to have conversations with me, and it's super weird. It's never happened to me before my entire life. So it's kind of awkward for me, but I've become more and more comfortable with it just daily, and it's gotten to the point where I like almost desire to go talk to people, and it's become almost just kind of easy, you know. So I'm gonna give you the tips that led me to the place where this has become easier for me. So I'm gonna give you 10 tips on how to have conversations with people and how to make like a really good impact, how to be comfortable doing it. So stick around if you want to hear those tips. So number 1 and 2 are the easiest ones. And if you guys have ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by, I think that's by Dale Carnegie. The 2 tips that they always give you is number 1, always smile. I talked about that in my last video, but if you smile, there's a thing called mirror neurons in your brain, and what those things do is they cause you to mirror other people. If you see an action that someone else is taking, you also smile. You do that same action a lot of times, like a yawn or a smile, or sometimes people are they will see someone else cry and they'll also cry, that type of a thing. So number 1, smile, because it'll make the other person smile usually. Easiest tip in the whole world for conversations. Number 2, use the other person's name. The sweetest sound to any person is the sound of their own name. It's what their mom called them, you know, when they were a little baby. It's what makes them have like a warm feeling in their heart. So, and don't be one of these weirdos that like repeats the person's name every time you say a sentence. Like, thanks, John. Nice to meet you, John. I'll be talking to you later, John. Like, you don't have to do that. You can just say it like one time. But that it's almost like a neurological trick. Like if you say another person's name and you smile at them, a lot of times they just associate you with the person that they like. So those are the 2 easiest tips that I can give you. if you just follow those 2 main tips, it'll be a little bit easier for you, I promise. And there's 3 things I would tell you not to do when you're having conversations. Like if you want to have a conversation with someone and you just don't want to do anything super awkward, these 3 things are what you need to do. Number 1, do not be easily offended. Some people say awkward, weird things, and they just do it. It's not like they even meant to say it, I've noticed. Like some people will say something and they'll be like, I don't even know why I said that, you know, and then they'll try to take it back. And it happens a lot. And if you get easily offended, a lot of times you'll jump to a conclusion that that person really meant to say something awkward, and maybe they didn't. Maybe they were just trying to also have an awkward conversation with you. So give people the benefit of the doubt and don't be easily offended. Also, don't be judgmental. If you're talking to another person and they're telling you a story, it's much more difficult for the other person to be honest with you if they know that you're going to be super judgmental of them. So I try to, and it's not even judgmental of like what they're saying. Like it's also, here's a good example. I've talked about this in my other videos where I actually had to work customer service for a while. And one of the things that I did when working in customer service, where I was the worst customer service person of all time, but I did do it. And I remember one of the things I learned was that if you want to make people more comfortable with you kind of immediately, you ignore you recognize the thing that they feel they're most judged for, and then you just straight ignore it. It makes you way more comfortable with the other person. So the example I have is when I was working at, I was working in the mall at this store, and this group of girls, they're kind of not necessarily regular, but we'd seen them in there a couple of times, you know. There's a group of girls that most likely like went to a local high school or something like that, and there was maybe like 4 or 5 of them, and one of them was a little person. She was like 3.5 feet tall, very short, you know, had some sort of dwarfism syndrome. But these, you know, she was hanging out with these like obviously like really popular girls, you know, and she always came in with them, and she was very pretty and took very good care of herself. But you could tell that she knew that when you look at her, the first thing you see is that she's a little person. And so my thought was, I wonder if I can make her feel more comfortable by disregarding that completely. And that's what I did. And she liked me a lot for it, because it's not something she could help, you know. She couldn't stop being, you know, she couldn't make herself taller, right? So, you know, if you just completely disregard the thing that the other person is going to think that you're judging them over, a lot of times that will make you really good friends with someone. And also the number 3 thing that you do not want to do is you don't want to gossip. You really need to I made this a rule for myself a really long time ago, and I really try to follow it. I'm not a type of person that gossips at all, because I read this rule that like if the other person is not there to defend themselves, then it's not a fair fight. So if you're gossiping about another person, you're just like telling a story, that person's not there to like set the story straight. So if you gossip about the other person, not only is that just not a good thing to do, it's also something that's off-putting to the other person. Because if you're the type of person that gossips, the person that you're gossiping to knows that you're a gossip, and they know that they can't trust you with anything. So don't gossip, don't be easily offended, and don't be judgmental. And within reason, you know, like if a person's like a Nazi or something, you just don't hang out with them. You know, you can judge them negatively because of that. So be discerning, obviously, but try not to be overtly judgmental. And if you build a reputation for a person that does not gossip, you know, you're trustworthy, you're not judgmental, you're not easily offended, you'll make a lot more friends. And I've noticed that a lot lately, especially like in one of my first videos, I talked about how I have a lot of trouble making friends with women, and I've realized if you follow these 3 rules, you make friends with women a lot more easily. Like if a woman knows that they can trust you and that you're not going to gossip about them, also if they know that you're not trying to get with their husband, you'll make some pretty good friends. So anyway, don't gossip, don't be judgmental, and don't be easily offended. Also smile and use the other person's name. So that is, 5 things? Okay, now I have 5 things that you do want to do, okay? So, number 1, be honest. Always be honest. And if this is something that, I always thought of myself as an honest person, but then I read this book, and it was talking about honesty, and it was saying, like, if a person asks you for your honest opinion and you don't give them your honest opinion, if you try to like skirt the issue and give them like a little white lie so that they don't feel bad, that person trusted you and asked for your honest opinion. And if you don't give it to them, that means that you do not have enough respect for them to believe that A, they can hear the truth, or you have a cowardice in that you don't want to have to deal with whatever it would take to tell that person the truth. So once you realize that being dishonest is kind of cowardly, at least that's my personal opinion, and you try your very best to just be honest in all things, people recognize that. They do. Number 2 is to be self-aware. Now, this is something that I've been really working on recently, because I've been trying to I've been working on mindfulness, and I've been trying to do meditations, and I've been trying to do mindfulness practices. Like there's one mindfulness practice where you're like, whatever you're doing, say you're doing dishes or whatever, and you intentionally watch what your hands are doing, right? So you intentionally are watching everything that you do and just becoming like hyper aware of everything around you. This encourages self-awareness. And when you encourage self-awareness, and when you are self-aware in a conversation, you can read the room, like, me telling offensive jokes and it's like a group of 90-year-old ladies, read the room, right? So be self-aware, know your audience, know, like if you're talking to your homie, you can talk a little bit more openly than if you're talking to, you know, your homie's mom, right? It's going to be a little bit different. So know your audience, be self-aware of where you're at, how you're acting, how you're presenting yourself. Also think like, you know, is my posture good? Am I standing properly? If you read anything about nonverbal communication, how you're standing, what you're doing with your hands, how you're looking, these type of things, they all mean something. Even if it's just on like a subconscious level to the other person. Maybe the other person doesn't exactly know why they like or dislike what you just did, but it's just like the smile thing. Like you just kind of do it automatically. And so if you're not self-aware and the other person can recognize that and they notice that like you're just really depressed, you're like, you got horrible posture and you're like looking over here the whole time you're talking and you're like slurring your words and you're like rolling your eyes and like, you know, be self-aware. Carry yourself like a person who has something to say. Be self-aware, right? So be self-aware, be honest. Also be warm, kind, competent. I counted that as one, but it's just like kind of a way of speaking. I think if you're kind, competent, and warm, that means that like you're exuding a bit of love, I think, to the other person. Not just like a ignorant love, you know, like I'm aware of who you are. I'm aware of our conversation. It's important enough to me to speak to you as if you're an important person. It's important to me to give you an honest opinion. You know, try to be competent, but also be warm and kind. Might be a little bit more of a difficult one to explain, but I've talked to some people who are just really, really cold when you talk to them. And I don't know if they meant to be, but, you know, one-word answers or, you know, maybe they're just not paying attention or whatever. But I kind of think about this thing in some of the meditations I've done. They ask you to kind of expand, right, to be more encompassing than your own body. And so I kind of think of that in the same way as when I'm having a conversation with someone, I almost try to like envelop them in a type of like energy, right? Like a warmth, an energy, a connection that we're having. I kind of envision like my heart expanding. My mother-in-law calls it heart stretching, but she referred to it as when you have a child, your heart stretches to have more love for that child, because it just won't fit in your previous heart, which I think is really cool. But I think about that. This is kind of similar when I'm having conversations with people. I think that if you can intentionally try to make them feel like a loving energy while you're speaking to them, it rarely does not end well for me. So something to think about. Just try to be warm and kind and competent in what you're saying. Also, as far as being competent, I guess this kind of goes along with the next one as well, being knowledgeable. So being knowledgeable and competent. So just not just talking to talk, but try to find a conversation that interests you, that you know a lot about. So say you can kind of dig into the other person's personality, and it's actually the next thing I was going to say, be genuinely interested in what the other person has to say. So if the other person's talking to you and you recognize something that you also have an interest in, try to share your knowledge, right? Be knowledgeable in what you have to say. Don't just be talkative, right? So don't just, I found that I had this problem a lot when I was having conversations with people. I kind of like pretend to be interested in what they were interested in just because I was too scared to ask them questions about themselves and, you know, delve deeper into a conversation. So I've tried to work on that a lot recently. I've tried to not only be honest in my interest of the other person, but also ask enough questions to find something that I can be interested in, because I've found that my interests are so varied that most of the time I have some overlapping interests with the other person. And that's really, that's basically the 10 tips all together. But I also want to say that one of the ways that I found to really connect with a lot of people is through reading, and just taking courses and things like that. I seem to find that the more knowledge I have, the easier it is to converse with people, because it's easier to find things that overlap with what I've learned about. And having like a knowledgeable, competent critique or conversation about whatever that thing is that person's interested in, it's almost always very surprising to them. And all you gotta do is find the person's like weird fandom or weird, you know, thing that they studied. Anyway, so the 10 tips are, first, to smile, use the other person's name. I'll hide this up right here. 3 things to not do. So smile, use the other person's name, do not be easily offended, do not be judgmental, do not gossip, right? That's 5. And then the 5 things you do want to do: be knowledgeable, be honest, be self-aware, be warm, kind, competent, and be genuinely interested in what the other person has to say. If you can do those things without fear, you can make some really good friends. And it takes a lot of practice, and it kind of sucks. And it really literally took me like 5 years. So it's not an easy thing to do. But if you can ask the other person questions, if you can be warm and kind, if you can even say things that are like, explaining why you are the way that you are, you can say like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not very good at conversations, I'm very socially awkward. Usually it's a really good icebreaker, actually. I've also found a really good way to make people laugh. If like I'm having a conversation with someone and I feel really, really awkward in the conversation, I'm having a conversation with someone and it's all super awkward. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll be like, cool, I'm gonna go be socially awkward over here now, over there now, and then you just walk away. Oftentimes when the other person also recognizes that it's been really awkward, they laugh. Like, they think it's pretty funny. So admitting how socially awkward you are is usually funnier than it is embarrassing, I think, because what I've noticed is that a lot of us are really socially awkward, and a lot of us just retreated from society because of COVID. And it's I think we're all kind of trying to get back into the swing of things. And you can also use that as an excuse to be like, oh my God, sorry, I've been locked up for 2 years because of COVID, and now I'm just getting back into talking to people. And, just be totally honest with people, and people will oftentimes understand. I've noticed it's not as scary as you think it is. I often think about that movie, Fight Club. I don't know if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's a great movie. I think about the scene in Fight Club where like Brad Pitt told everyone they have to go out and pick a fight that night with someone, and so they all go out and they try to pick a fight with someone, and like the thing that they realize is that most people will do just about anything to avoid a fight. And so I've been trying to think about that often, like it's not that scary. Most people aren't gonna just like punch you in the face for talking to them, you're gonna make it through this conversation. So anyway, I've been following these tips and it's made me a much better communicator, and I hope that you guys can try these tips and maybe it'll work for you, because I just wish that I wish for us all to be less awkward. Anyway, so cool. I am gonna go take some medicine because I do not feel good. Hope you guys have a great day. Like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you think about the tips. If you have any more tips, if there's any other funny, awkward things that you say, I would love to hear about them. You guys can, I'll link the Facebook group down below. We have like 50 members now. I'm pretty excited. Also, I'm really excited. We got to 500 subscribers. I'm excited about that. Now I got to double that and then I'll be monetized. What? Also, audible.com/rose. I get a, premium for that. So if you don't have an Audible account, I highly recommend it. I have literally 500 books in my library. It's ridiculous. I can't even keep up with my own interests. It's ridiculous. But check that out if you want. I get a kickback from it. So anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think. Bye.